Einstein was once asked by a journalist, "What's it like to be the smartest man in the world?" And Einstein responded, "I don't know. You'll have to ask Nikola Tesla." Einstein and Tesla had been at odds about various things throughout their careers. And even though Einstein's remark was said in jest, it was reflective of the fact that Tesla was regarded in the scientific community as one of the most important scientific figures in the history of the world.
Today, I talk with author and noted Tesla aficionado Samantha Hunt
About the legacy of this great inventor, especially in an age in which his very name has been subsumed by someone who seems to stand for everything Tesla himself was not, Elon Musk.
From Buff Olivia Media and brought to you by LitHub Radio, this is Culture Schlock.
So before I jump into the conversation, I want to take a moment to properly introduce my guest for today. Samantha Hunt is the author of 5 books, most recently the unwritten book, An Investigation, which was a New York Times Book Review editor's choice. Hunt's other books include the short story collection The Dark Dark, which is one of my favorite books ever, then the novels Mr. Splitfoot and The Seas. Hunt is a recipient of a Guggenheim Fellowship, the Bard Fiction Prize, the National Book Foundation's 5 Under 35 Prize, the St. Francis College Literary Prize, and many others. She was a finalist for the Orange Prize and the Penn Faulkner Award. In 2009, she published a novel called The Invention of Everything Else, which imagines the last days in the life of Tesla. Thank you so much for joining me, Samantha. I'm so excited to talk to you about this figure who is very important to the both of us, and for different reasons.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. I love to talk about Tesla.
For those of you who know the name, but maybe not the guy, Tesla's responsible for, as Samantha says in her book title, the invention of everything else in the entire world you've heard of, you've never heard of. His most famous contribution, arguably, is the alternating current, which is a safe alternative to the direct current that was promoted by Thomas Edison. Tesla is a very, very special figure in the history of the world, not only because of his brilliance, but because of his policies around his inventions. I like to refer to him as like the OG open source inventor. Samantha, would you like to talk a little bit about this? Yeah.
Sure. I hadn't heard of him when I was growing up. I had never been taught who Tesla was in school. And it's kind of funny how I stumbled onto him because this was long before anybody named a car after him. Um, and then the name, there was like a hair metal band called Tesla. And so somehow I had that name kicking around in my head because I went to an art exhibit that was about James Joyce's theater Volta. And I said, "Oh, I don't know a lot about Volta. Let me remember the name and I'll look it up when I get home." And somewhere on the train ride home, I switched Volta out for Tesla, which is, of course, an interesting mistake because they both end up having, units of electrical power named after them.
Yeah.
And so I look up Tesla, and I was surprised because I was probably in my late 20s or 30s when this happened. I was really surprised to learn how important he was and that I had never been talked about him. My grandmother was still alive at the time, and she was born in 1915. And I asked her, "Do you know who Tesla is?" And she didn't know who Tesla was. And she, in her life, she didn't have electricity when she was born. She tells me an incredible story of when her family was living in Brooklyn and they got their first electric light in the house, and she actually hated it. She said it was like so bright that she kind of didn't care for its glow. But she hadn't heard of Tesla either, and so the first things that I learned about him was that he actually invented radio, not Marconi. That he was responsible for our contemporary electrical system. And then the third thing that I learned was that when he was a boy, he he made a motor that was powered by June bugs. And I was like, okay, I need to do some more research on this man. He sounds like, just right up my alley. He's like a poet inventor. And so, thus began like a 3-year process of trying to learn everything I could about him. And the reason he's remained all these years later such an icon to me and such an icon to so many people who actually care about art and care about science is because of this, what you mentioned, right? He is the OG open source. And he part of the reason why I had never heard of him, sadly, in America, and I think why a lot of people had never heard of him before the car, is because he didn't protect his patents. He is not a capitalist. He was not a capitalist. And he actually said, there's a wonderful quote from Tesla where he said, I don't believe that man can own thunder and lightning. And that's what these things are that we're working with. And so, he thought, yep, let me put it out there. 6 other people won Nobel Prizes off of his patents. And that lack of recognition did hurt Tesla. There was a horrible thing happened where he was called to the phone, and a New York Times reporter who somehow had an erroneous report that Tesla had won the Nobel Prize, alerted him to that. And Tesla kind of then waited for the Nobel Committee to call him, and they never did. He never received that recognition, sadly. But it's important to remember how many things he gave us, how many things he brought to the world. And it's even more important, I think, to remember that he stood at this place of true invention, where he really believed in figuring out our world and developing things with these powers and giving them to everybody for us all to enjoy. And so, yeah, shout out to Tesla.
That's the subheading of this podcast episode. Shout out to Tesla, the OG.
Not the car. It's funny. So oftentimes when I say I wrote a book about Tesla, a lot of younger folks especially are like, you mean the car? And I'm like, no, I don't mean the car. I don't mean the car.
Yeah,
I mean, as much as I admire EV technology and electric vehicles was something that Tesla wrote about extensively and anticipated. A lot of his inventions that he didn't ever have enough time in his long life or funding in his poor life to ever develop, he wrote about, and electric vehicles was certainly one of those. He wrote about driving a car back and forth across America that would be powered on nothing but the sun. So, in many ways, he anticipated a lot of good inventions that were still to come.
About the electric car company, Tesla, that company was established in 2003 by Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning as Tesla Motors, to quote Wikipedia. And they named it after Tesla, the, great inventor and pioneer of electrical technology. And Elon Musk came on board the following year to lead the funding round, and then eventually he became company chairman. But it's not his invention, and he came on board as a financier.
It's just so important to remind folks that Elon Musk does not invent things. He's not an inventor.
No, he has never invented things. He has joined companies that seem like good ideas and ran them from a business perspective. He did not invent PayPal, he did not invent Tesla, and he did not invent Twitter. He just attaches himself to these things.
Yeah.
Which is the fantastic inverse of a man like Tesla, who saw his own inventions become the accomplishments of other people. The public
exactly what's wrong with capitalism, because it squashes creativity in this way, and at this very delicate time where it seems almost like all hope is lost against capitalism. The question comes up: what's going to happen to our artists? What's going to happen to our inventors? And And whenever I talk about Tesla, I really try to keep the idea of his work as an artist at the forefront, because he was, maybe one of the last inventors who really didn't broker a difference between arts and sciences in the same way that we do now. I think we've reached a point where we kind of place arts on one end of the spectrum and science on the other, with so much focus on, teaching kids STEM, STEM, STEM instead of STEAM. And that the arts and sciences have become divorced, at least in the popular imagination of so many people. And I think that's a really dangerous place to be, because without imagination, without creativity, without an artistic sensibility, I don't know that the inventions that are yet to arrive will happen, or will be anything more than money making schemes. And that's never been the
Yeah.
kind of heart and soul that makes good invention happen. Creativity is. Yeah.
No, but in this way, I mean, Tesla sort of seems to stand in the legacy of someone like Jules Verne, who, yes, was a writer, but was a writer who wrote about the potential of science as an art. And there are figures in the 19th century who are pursuing science and art as this sort of joint understanding, this like compound venture. I mean,
Absolutely. I mean, there's a way, I love it that you brought up Jules Verne, because there's a way that I link Tesla with, as kind of the other side of the coin of authors such as like Octavia Butler or Ursula K. Le Guin, like science fiction writers who actually predicted a future that now we are stepping into. Um, Octavia Butler, in regards to Parable of the Sower, has this very chilling interview that she gave at MIT, where somebody in the audience said, some people say you're a seer, some people say you can predict the future. And she said, all I can say is I certainly hope that's not true. And I mean, now when you read Parable of the Sower, it reads as reality, and so there's a way that Tesla was the other side of the
yeah.
coin of that relationship to art, where these science fiction writers were predicting a future, and he was using art to create that future in some way. Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. Because Tesla saw, we one of the things we said in our preliminary call, he said that he cared about humanity even if he didn't interface with humans.
Yeah,
Um, you know,
so he had a terrible germ phobia, which made it hard for him to actually have intimate relationships with humans. He also had a lot of kind of quirks, like he couldn't stand to see women with pierced ears. He had a problem with human hair. Pearl earrings, especially, were really hard on him, which at the turn of the century, maybe was a hard thing to even go
unavoidable.
out. It didn't prevent him from having friendships, and he was friends with some really kind of wonderful free thinkers, like such as Mark Twain and John Muir. And um, it's interesting because there's a way in which I think of him as, not being able to deal with humans, but at the same time being such a humanitarian, because he saw an interconnectedness that I think capitalism tries to deny exists, right? Capitalism tries to tell the story of a hero's narrative, that it's like basically one person, usually one man, who is responsible for tremendous change. And here we have one man who was responsible for tremendous change, and all he ever did was acknowledge the other, was, think about collaboration, think about connection. And when we look back to when he was quite a young man and see, where that strength of invention came from, he writes very honestly, and in a way that actually produced a lot of ridicule in his own autobiography, about how he would look at the exhalations of his brother Dane at night when they would sleep, and he would see foreign languages, or he would see the plans of things that he would later invent. I mean, he had a facility with the world of dream, or even with the world of connection, with the world of imagining, that he didn't broker a difference between reality and these realms. Oftentimes he was ridiculed for it, and maybe sometimes even um, you know punished financially, I would say, or had plans disappear
Hmm?
when he would speak too openly and too honestly about the dreams that he had. And so, I feel like that side of him that was able to imagine all of these connections really pulls him into the camp of an artist.
Yeah.
And so I oftentimes do call him a poet inventor rather than just an inventor.
Yeah. Well, I
And he
mean,
published poetry too. He did publish poetry. He wrote poetry and published it. It's not great. I'll say. I mean, it maybe for the time. It's oftentimes satirical. It deals with, it takes on science as its topic often. But he really kind of in the most adorable way would sign those poems Nikola Tesla, comma, a novice. Admitting that he was just starting his life as a poet.
but it's so sweet too that, he would do that, but also how his inventions and his sort of his mathematical and physical, isn't in the sense of the discipline physics, computations are sort of a poet's work in another sense, but it sort of pushes the conversation about what poetry is. And if, an equation which follows a formula like many sonnets or, villanelles or, other prescribed modes of poetry do, if those are not, wrongfully kept out of the poetry pantheon. Um,
And that also brings up the idea that that he was in some way tapping into or accessing patterns that already exist in our universe. And that goes back to him feeling like, well, how could I defend these patents? I don't own this. I just plucked them from the air, because quite literally the first time that he knew what the AC motor would look like, it was after this period of tremendous suffering where his hearing became so intense that he felt that he could like hear trains that were rolling by 10 miles away. So he felt that he could hear them so loud that he had to actually have pillows over his ears. He couldn't leave his room. He was in pain by the levels of observation that he experienced in the world. And a friend of his, this was when he was still in Europe, and a friend of his came and fetched him and said, you've been so sick. I need to get you outside. Let's go for a walk." And he tried to lead him underneath the bridge, and Tesla thought that the pressure of just having a bridge overhead was actually going to crush his brain. And they passed underneath. Tesla didn't die. And he said that right after that, in a flash, he saw, just floating in the air in front of him, he saw the AC motor working perfectly. And so, this idea that these inventions or these patterns were things that already were in existence in some way, and he was plucking them from the air. I don't mean to discredit the work that he did to arrive there, because that's absolutely not what I'm saying.
no, of
Um,
course.
but that he was able to enjoy this generosity of spirit because of just his powers of observation of the world. That he never even inserted himself as the person to take credit for these.
Right. Um, there's an interesting line actually that I think about sometimes. I think it's from, this is the most random reference I will be making today, and I'm not sure if it's in the Agatha Christie novel that inspired it, Halloween Party, but in A Haunting in Venice, the recent Poirot movie, which was good, as opposed to the other two, I'm sorry, Kenneth Branagh, but this one was actually quite good. In A Haunting in Venice, there's a medium character who said that she doesn't sort of tell fortunes. She takes dictation from the spirits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I love
Mm-hmm.
the idea of someone as an artist, in this sort of vein of a servant or a steward of the ideas that exist around us. And it's because of this person's ability to collaborate with that sort of nebulous world of ideas and um, interpret those ideas into things that are tangible and observable by others in the human world. But Tesla recognized things about the world that could be adapted into things that could service humans and humanity. Um,
Absolutely.
and was so generous and kind and unprotective of himself in ways that are sometimes like make me wish I could travel back in time, study law, and go be his lawyer. Like I I want to protect this man so much, and his lifetime certainly never overlapped with mine. But like he worked as a ditch digger for many years in between, inventions. After several of his patents were stolen by others who would take
Yeah.
advantage of his open heart and generous and really unselfish nature. I mean, he was so pure in this sense. Also, in the sense that we've discussed, where he's sort of in tune to the world around him in such a beautiful and intense way, but also that he sort of didn't have the sort of like guile that's associated with like original sin. Like he's this pure entity, almost otherworldly in his inability to recognize the avarice and the greed and the unempathetic and in all other ways Machiavellian and nasty qualities that humans can possess.
Yeah. I mean, I don't totally mean to draw this parallel between Edison and Musk, but there are moments of connection there that are kind of undeniable where, you know, Edison, like Musk, was not an inventor and yet oddly thought to be one or remembered as one. It's not to discount his genius in marketing or his genius in collecting intelligent people around him, because Edison was great at all of those things. And he actually, thinking about what Doge is up to now and an idea of creating efficiency, um, when Tesla made it to Edison's office as a young man just arriving here, he Edison hired him to turn his laboratory into an efficiently run place. And Tesla did the work, like didn't sleep. Maybe he was sleeping 2 or 3 hours a night. He worked and he worked and he worked because Edison had promised him $10,000, which was like a unbelievable sum. And when Tesla goes to claim his payment, Edison says, "Oh, you don't understand the American sense of humor," and didn't pay him. And then Tesla leaves that laboratory and winds up digging ditches for a couple of years. I don't know if that, partly what made him into having such a sympathetic heart towards, you know, towards the working stiff, but something happened that he didn't jump on the bandwagon of capitalism in the same way that folks who surrounded him did. I mean, he later would go on to have a relationship with J.P. Morgan, that for a while was quite fruitful, and J.P. Morgan was helping him to build his laboratory out in Shoreham. But after Tesla maybe made some comments about some pretty wild dreams, talking to aliens and whatnot, communications with Mars, and after it became much too expensive, way over budget, JP Morgan pulled that funding and the tower was torn down, in an act of kind of really horrible racism, where they thought that Tesla, this man who had given America so much, who loved this country so much, that he's kind of identified as a possible spy. When he dies, his papers are confiscated by the Department of Alien Property. And so many mishandlings, just because oh, wait, what was it? I think it was Morgan. This is an incredible story. I think it's with Morgan. When he heard Tesla's accent, he asked Tesla, if they practiced cannibalism where he came from.
Which is nuts to ask anyone, but Jesus.
Especially since you're Croatian, aren't you?
I'm Croatian. It's just funny to hear. Yeah, so Tesla was Serbian, born
but lived in Croatia. Yeah.
yes, and lived in what is now present day Croatia, but like in a way, the borders are all sort of mythical entities anyway. I mean, like
everyone gets to claim Tesla. Everyone gets to claim Tesla.
So Tesla is in a way, it's sort of fitting that he belongs to this region of Europe that is constantly changing shape, and it's sort of this sort of human imposition of borders seems immaterial and unimportant. But he's from this place, and ancestrally he is Serbian, and he is a figure from, enough of a region of Europe that was outside of the mainstream Western world that he was otherized.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
but he
Mhm.
was still European enough to be included in this like mainstream scientific community. So I want to continue talking about Tesla and his relationship to humanity. And I
Mm.
want to talk about that in the context of Elon Musk.
Thinking about just right off the bat, even just the example of their both of their relationships with women.
Hmm.
You know, there's no record that Tesla ever had a romantic relationship with either a man or a woman. There is tremendous record of his love affair that he had with the pigeons of New York City, um, and even believed himself to be married to one of the pigeons. And he says that when she died, the creative spirit left him actually. He was older at that time, but he continued to take care of the pigeons, and oftentimes he lived most of his life in New York in hotel rooms, and so he did experience some trouble because he would let the pigeons live in his hotel rooms, and some hotels, wouldn't could not get behind that. The last 10 years of his life, he was at the Hotel New Yorker, where the pigeons were kind of free to come and go. I contrast that to
Yeah.
Musk's relationship with women, where he almost has this way of taking strong women and turning them into farm creatures for his spawn in some really disturbing sort of way, trying to build up his commune down in Austin that he wants to populate with his children as if the world requires this in some way. I mean, it's also interesting to note that some of his children have rejected his role as a father. Um, I also think about, Tesla had he kind of understood. There's a beautiful quote. Oh, I wish I had found it. But where Tesla talks about, um, what that he's kind of anticipates a day when women, um, when our thinking after having been so long oppressed, he anticipated a time where there would be some sort of liberation of the mind, and that he calculated, that after so long being silent observer to the world that men were making, that women would not necessarily rise up, but that women's power would come to its fruition. Um, and the other woman in Tesla's life who I want to shout out is that he writes very beautifully about his mother, and he says that his inventions came from her, that she herself, who, if we examine what her responsibilities were in the day to day, we would call her a housewife. But he thought of her as an inventor, just in clever gadgets around the kitchen, things to help her with her daily tasks, living on a small farm in Croatia. And so he posits his kind of ingenuity as coming from her. His father wanted him to be involved in the church, wanted him to become either a minister or a priest, and that idea horrified Tesla. He was not interested in that life.
No, I love like learning about his interior world, especially with the pigeons. I mean, this is a man who was like a bit germophobic about around humans, but whose love of the vulnerable, whose appreciation for the animals, but not just any animals, animals that are sort of like historically maligned as, vermin of the city.
One
Um,
step above rats, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
and
to many New Yorkers, not to me. I think they're absolutely beautiful, but
they're doves. Pigeons are doves.
they're doves.
I feel
They're
so sad.
gorgeous. They're opals. I mean, they're like flying opals. They're so beautiful.
I love a pigeon, and also like every once in a while you'll be eating a sandwich on a bench, and a pigeon will look at you like, and it's thrilling. It's like we had a moment. I'm just so when they're just sort of like it's incredible. I think that I mean Tesla's ability to have empathy for humanity, but also have empathy for other living creatures in the world and nature more broadly is such a, it's almost a horrifying contrast to Musk. I mean, especially with the Neuralink technology that's been, harming all of the lab monkeys. I mean, like there are, this is a man who has taken animals born into captivity for laboratory testing and forced them to have chips implanted in their brains. These are mammals who can experience pain. And then on the other hand, you had Tesla who would rehabilitate injured pigeons in his hotel rooms
And
and
was a
feed them
vegetarian too. He
and was
couldn't
a
eat
vegetarian.
animals. Hmm.
I was a vegetarian.
When we talk about when we're like basically laying out these two forms of masculinity too, I, I mean, first of all, of course, it's obviously very upsetting to me that the Tesla name has anything to do with this man who is interested in destroying our democracy. But the other thing that I want to say is, I don't when I watch Musk parading around like, some sort of rooster in the farmyard, that version of masculinity is such it appears to me to be so clearly a part of a weakness or an insecurity. And when I think about Tesla as a man and the kindness and the humanity and the care, and that requires so much more courage and so much more strength than this hero's narrative that Musk and his cronies are trying to force feed to America right now.
Mhm. And also, I think we should just get this on the books. Tesla was extremely handsome.
Oh my God.
Jesus Christ.
Absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely drop dead gorgeous. I know.
Like young
In casting
Christian
David Bowie
Bale.
to play him, Nolan casting David Bowie to play him was not far off the mark. It's like,
No,
yeah.
David Bowie as Tesla, like it could be like a Christian Bale or like a Milo Ventimiglia, like some with the slender faced, like dark hair. Like he's so handsome. It's just worth giving like giving him those
Yes.
props as well. But I want to talk a little bit about these sort of all these alternate forms of masculinity, and we've talked, or you mentioned Elon Musk's sort of appropriation of a sort of hero's journey narrative, the sort of like toxic, aggressive, 4chan alpha male culture that he has embraced, and is demonstrating by taking over all these small companies and sort of not even as a robber baron, but sort of like with the air of a conquistador. Like he is someone who takes women, smart and interesting women, and like impregnates them serially and then moves on and has this like farm of children. It's like this horrifying idea of, a sort of like a man who is trying to become a fatherland, like immortalize himself in Earth, in the world through science and colonization of companies and lands and space.
Yeah.
He is from an apartheid state, and his family has historically benefited from. His family's very wealthy, and he benefited from those systems of oppression in those places. And he wants to colonize and take over other people and sort of grow his own crop of humans. I mean, he is the most Bond villain-esque person I think humanity has created ever. His desires to be on top are part and parcel with his desires to crush everyone else under his boot and only release an army of adoring, adulating cronies.
What unbelievable um,
Hubris.
levels of hubris and insecurity. I mean, it's
Yes.
just it's terrifying. And also, what is the end game? I mean, I'm why you work for money, and when you have these levels of money, I don't even
Take it
understand.
all. I think you just
Yeah,
take it all. I think it
yeah.
is it is a game of Monopoly or Risk that you're not happy until the sort of like get smart, Kim Possible, James Bond villain goal of world domination is complete. I truly think that is what is at stake here. And I think world domination is the end goal of someone with a lack of imagination. It's just like, well,
Yeah,
I'm gonna get it all.
yeah, yeah,
What,
yeah, yeah.
um,
Yeah,
Musk
I
is.
mean, it'll be interesting when he realizes that he too is mortal.
Yes, and seems constantly to be trying to extend his own. I don't even know if youth is the word I would call it, but whatever his deal is. I mean, he has, uh, it seems like he has augmented his own body in ways that are, seem to be youth or life extending in their goals, and ultimately, characters like this. I like referring to Musk as a character because it contextualizes him as
Mhm.
not unlike anybody else who has, been created by Ian Fleming or someone of that ilk. But Musk has this false reputation as a sort of self-made man or a genius. And genius also is a self-made sort of thing. Like, you are yourself born with these gifts. Um, the thing about Musk is that he has received sort of incredible resources throughout his entire life and also translated, it seems, the good fortune of his life into such a behavioral pattern that he associated it with conquests, bullying, and belittling of others. That the
It
way,
echoes Justice Kavanaugh's saying that, he nobody helped him get where he was.
right,
When I first heard that, I kept thinking like, I bet his mother would sure be surprised to hear that.
right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, some idea that your privilege and that all the people that you have bullied, you didn't use them to step on to get where you.
Yeah. There's a commonality in figures like this, and this is the rejection of the notion of a community or a collective. It's the complete refusal to acknowledge that no one is an island, no one is the full arbiter of anything, and no one is the beneficiary of anything, and the sole beneficiary of anything, unless it's, completely crushing anyone under your boot. And Tesla is a figure who, may not have been the social butterfly of Eastern Europe or New York City, but cared so much about the world and people that he did not, and I want to reiterate this, that he did not feel the need to profit off his own inventions. And he thought it was important that people have access to science, mathematics, and these technologies for the betterment of the world, because that is what science does. And ideally, that is what art does. And there are people like Musk who are aggressively pro-STEM, anti-art because they understand, or at least they feel threatened. They understand it enough to feel threatened that art creates humanity. There's a reason why the humanities is a concept and that humanistic is an artistic term because these aspects fuel each other. The more we strengthen the ability of people to have access to art and science, the more that they are able to empower themselves and therefore empower others. It strengthens the community. And people like Musk and people not like Tesla want to have a monopoly on those things. They want to have a stranglehold on those things, bottleneck it for other people because it makes themselves feel better.
Yeah,
The last thing Tesla is a bully. The sad thing about Tesla is that he died penniless. We have
yeah.
Musk, by contrast, is the richest man in the world.
I mean, and that's my greatest hope for our conversation and for just recognizing Tesla, the inventor, is that folks will. It was my point in writing The Invention of Everything Else, is that I really want people to know about this man and to remember him. It's chilling that the name Tesla now gets associated with this this narcissistic bully. And I hope that as folks, move forward, they don't, that they break that association. Of course, that they know that he did not even invent the car. Um, that Musk did not is not responsible for inventing the car. And so it's funny, there's a lot of folks who live around me who have Teslas who now have like updated them with bumper stickers that say, I bought this before I knew Musk was evil. Um, I feel like, there should be some pride in ownership of Teslas because, yeah, go EVs and go Tesla technology. And so, Tesla owners, you can feel pride in that your car has really very little to do with Musk besides his money to fund this.
Mhm. Yes, yes. Um, and it's so ironic too because, Musk seemingly came onto the EV technology because he thought it was the way of the future and a
Mhm.
good investment, not because he believed in it. And now he's part of an institution that wants to defund
Tearing
environmental
down. Yep.
regulation.
That's an interesting parallel with Edison, right? So Edison develops the electric chair at Sing Sing. Has William Kemmler is executed via. It's horrible. It doesn't really work. It like takes 20 minutes to kill him. It's terrible. Um, and and he thinks that he's shutting down AC because he thinks that his DC light bulbs won't work on it. He was worried about making money. He was worried about selling light bulbs. I mean, it turns out that tungsten light bulbs work on AC as well. But that there's a certain similarity here where that now Musk is tearing down his own
Yeah,
supposed invention, which
right.
is obviously not his invention.
Because it's
Yeah.
never actually about scientific innovation. It's never actually about creating things that could benefit the world. It's only about the sort of hegemony and primacy of the brand. And that's what Edison was above all else. He was, I mean, and I think this is a relevant term in today's world. He's a brand manager. He is a brilliant marketing engineer. And to an extent, so is Elon Musk. I mean, I think Edison was way better at Elon Musk because a lot of people know Musk sucks. And I think a lot of people didn't know that about Edison. But then again, it was a completely different media landscape back then. Um, and Edison didn't own the equivalent of Twitter. Um, but I think it's extremely worth pointing out that in the development of the Edison brand, Edison was more concerned about appearances than functionality, productivity, or help. To discredit Tesla's alternating current because he was afraid of it being a competitor to Edison's direct current, Edison staged public executions using alternating current to scare people and to show the ways that it was dangerous. And again, of course it's dangerous. It's electricity. And one of the cruelest demonstrations of Edison's commitment to this smear campaign and the upholding of his own brand is that
Or Topsy.
or Topsy. I mean, Topsy was an elephant at Coney Island who got upset uh, and
Got
harmed
upset because people were throwing lit cigarette butts
exactly at her.
Mhm.
She got upset because of the circumstances she was in, which were cruel, and uh, got very upset and injured someone and was deemed too dangerous to be in the Coney Island exhibit where she was. There were sort of lots of questions about what to do with her. And Edison decided that a good thing to do would be to use alternating current to execute her via electrocution. And he would film it with the, film technology he and his company were pioneering. So one of the first films we actually have is the electrocution of Topsy the elephant, which is an unbelievably cruel spectacle to even witness
Mhm.
in that sort of flickering,
Yeah.
old-timey film. I mean, the idea that this act of cruelty, this experience of unbelievable pain on an unsuspecting animal who did nothing wrong, and even if the animal did do something wrong. Morality is a human concept. These are animals.
Mhm. Mhm.
That would be Tesla, that would be Edison's recourse, is one of the most vile things I can think of in that I could possibly think of.
Mhm.
And that,
Mhm.
Musk with his monkeys not caring about the relentless pain he is putting them through, compared with Tesla taking pity and finding appreciation in the small, overlooked creatures of New York City, I think firmly establishes sort of all anyone needs to know on the surface about the difference between these three men, or the
Yeah,
similarities between two of them and the
yeah,
differences between them and Tesla.
I think so. Yeah.
I just want to say, I want to quote something that you said earlier, and I can loop it back in. But when we were talking about Musk and his wives and the sort of like commune of the mind that he is forcing into reality, in contrast between Elon's like baby factories and the women who are co-opted into that, and Tesla's love for his pigeon, you said there's no freer bride than a pigeon. And I just thought that was such a beautiful line. I wanted to get that in the recording.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and true, right? There is no freer bride than that of a pigeon. It's not bound by law. That's a love not bound by law. It's a love not even bound by proximity. Sometimes she would fly away and he wouldn't know where she was. He'd go looking for her in Bryant Park, and sometimes she'd appear and sometimes she wouldn't. So yeah, the fact that he could love across distance, across species, is such a testament to who the man was.
Yeah. And just in this beautiful, innocent way, just appreciating the spirit of this creature, just as he appreciated the sort of like spirits all around him, the spirits of like nature and math and science and all of the things that swirled in his like synesthetic vision. Um, well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been such an honor having you and getting to talk with you about this wonderful man.
Yes, thank you for letting me, cavell about him, how much I love this wonderful man.
We are part of the pro Tesla, the anti-Musk pro Tesla non-defamation society. We are accepting members. Please talk about Tesla and his wonderful inventions. Please read Samantha Hunt's 2009 novel, The Invention of Everything Else. And also, if you want to read Tesla's writing himself, his own writings, Penguin has recently published an anthology of his writings that Samantha Hunt has edited, which is it called My
My
Inventions?
Inventions. Yep, My Inventions by Nikola Tesla.
My
Yep.
Inventions by Nikola Tesla. So feel free to check those out. Thank you so much for joining me, Samantha, again. It's been such a joy. And
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
thank you.
Culture Schlock is brought to you by Lit Hub Radio and produced by Olivia Media. The zesty Culture Schlock theme song that you're listening to right now was composed and performed by Richard Rutigliano. And this episode was produced by me, as well as John Buffalo Mailer, with help from Drew Broussard and support from Calvin Kasulke at Lit Hub. And of course, this episode would not have been possible without the participation of the great Samantha Hunt, whose rave-reviewed newest book, The Unwritten Book, is out now. And of course, as always, a big thank you to Nikola Tesla. I'm your host, Olivia Rutigliano. Thanks for listening. See you again next week.